Welcome to Energising Life with AKR Fitness. I'm Jase. We've got
Lynsey
and
Mike.
Oh, nailed it first time. We didn't even run through that. That was just a straight off the back, no rehearsal. We did well done. How are we feeling?
Yeah, good.
Good?
Yeah, energized.
Energized?
Yeah.
Yeah. Mike?
Ready to go.
Ready to go. Okay, so a few episodes back, we spoke bigger picture stuff in prioritizing your life and setting your goals and your values all together. Today we're going to talk a little bit more strategy and tactics for time management and the day-to-day stuff. Mike, give us a quick little rundown on time and then let's get into it.
Time.
The inevitable.
Do you know, I've long been, I don't want to say obsessed, it sounds a bit much, but I've thought about time for a lot of my life. I'm not
I would say
really
you've
sure
been
what I mean.
obsessed.
Okay, thanks for that. Thanks for that.
And that you told.
And I think about it a lot, like the passing of time, the end of when time runs out for each of us, how I use my time. I've not always been great at managing my time, but certainly it's something I've improved at and something I think about a lot.
Lynsey, your thoughts on time?
Thoughts on time? Not much of it.
From knowing you both personally, I kind of sense that your thoughts on time are slightly different to Mike's.
Yeah, I would say so. I'm very much and have been day to day, like embracing the moment, being present, and
It's one of the
if
things.
whatever comes next kind of thing.
Yeah.
In terms of your life, that you can plan, but you can't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's one of the things I think I admire most about you is your ability to be super present in day-to-day going-ons. And it's...
I think if I think too much about time and like Mike's, if you don't mind me saying this, is not afraid of death, basically. Am I right?
I welcome it.
No, but really.
Do you know, I had a conversation with someone the other day, and I have to say, this is not the sort of conversation I have with people regularly.
This podcast took a turn, didn't it?
But that topic came up, and I literally remember being a kid lying in my bed and not being afraid of death, but being curious, being like,
What is death?
and almost like, oh, well, I'll get to find out what happens, sort of thing. So yeah, it's something I think about, and if you read like some of the Stoic texts from the Greeks and the Romans, like they have this, meditate on your death because it helps you recognize what's important. Time is finite.
It's memento mori.
That's the term. That's the Latin term. Thanks for that.
Yeah, so for Mike, he's very much like, okay, yeah, death will come. For me, I'm like, oh, I'm not ready
Stay
for that
away.
ever to happen. Stay away from me. Don't come anywhere near me, kind of thing.
There you go. I remember one time reading, and I thought this was brilliant as well, that our circular clocks fool us because they create the illusion that time goes round and round forever, where actually the hourglass is the better representation of time, because sooner or later that last grain of sand drips out.
I think we just stop there and that's a wrap, folks.
Wow.
Yeah.
Tell me about that. What do you mean by the hourglass?
Like the egg timer things.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking.
Yeah.
So
it just keeps.
Lynsey just keeps flipping hers over.
That's exactly what I keep doing. Oh, no.
but you can't do that in life. Do you know what I mean? So sooner or later, all time runs out for everybody.
Yeah.
And I think, do you know, but people think it's morbid, but I think it's inspiring.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It's
Why do you find it inspiring?
Well, because again, to use Patrick's term from a few episodes back, it brings things into focus more. Do you know, like, and again, I always feel, what's the word? I think a lot of the time in this podcast we talk about these like great ideas and great ways of thinking, but I want to reiterate that like I struggle with all the same stuff that everybody else struggles with. But I think when you can get your head in that state and you realize, it can help bring attention to what actually matters and what things, you maybe going into a rage because your delivery you were waiting for that day didn't come, or you missed it and it's coming the next day, and you're getting really wound up. Like everybody can probably relate to getting wound up about a delivery. And like in the grand scheme of things, like probably 3 days later, once it's actually arrived, you don't care anymore. Yeah. It's that sort of thing,
It's the initial moment of, for God's sake. And then if you actually just zoom out a little bit, you're like, oh, well, it's not a big deal.
And I'm not that zen or that present all the time, but thinking about this stuff can certainly help, I think.
What I hear you saying is we have less time than we think.
I think so. And our experience of time speeds up as it passes. So like, my dad turned 70 this year, and he's like, there must be some sort of a mistake here because I just remember turning 30, and I think every decade, and if you ask people who have more decades behind them, which was the quickest decade, almost always they're going to say it's the most recent one. I have this idea that when you're at school, the time when you leave school feels like this far off mystical time that never is going to come.
It takes ages to arrive.
And it feels like it's never going to come because you're working up through all the years of school or whatever, but then as soon as you leave school, someone's hit some sort of light speed button and you're like, boom, God, it's been 10 or 20 or whatever since I left school. So like time passes faster as well. So we were chatting, Jase, about those Life in Weeks posters.
Yeah.
We both have those posters where it can visually represent if you were to live to a certain age, how many weeks you've used and whatever. I actually think it's somewhat false because you could look, let's say you were 45 and you're going to live to 90, just as a number. You could say to yourself, well, wow, I've only lived half my life. Again, fingers crossed that you get to live to 90. But that's half your life by years, but it's not half your life by how you experience it. Because if time's getting faster and faster and faster, you might have actually experienced more than half.
Yeah, life experience.
Why does it feel like it's getting faster though?
Well, that's a good question, Lynsey, and it's also something I've looked into. Not sure how factual this is, but it seems like it could be a half decent explanation. When things are novel to us, so like in your day-to-day, you're taking in all this bits of information from everywhere. If you think just constantly, your brain's bombarded with information. Now, what your brain has to do...
We call that social media.
Social media. But even like go step outside. There's birds flying, there's cars, there's all these different sounds and sights and sounds and things going on. Not to mention all your own thoughts about what you've got on that day. And what your brain has to do is try and filter out, the signal from the noise, right? Because you're overwhelmed if you go out and you just hear all the sounds at once. So your brain gets good at doing that. And the more it does that, so the less sort of novelty and the more it can do that, the theory goes, the quicker your experience of time. So if you think about when time's slow, when you're a kid, far more things are novel. Like just watch like a toddler or, even doesn't need to be a toddler. You could be 10 years old and fascinated at all these different sights and sounds and experiences. There's a lot of newness. Whereas maybe in adulthood, you live in the same house, you take the same route to work, you do the same job. And
so it's routine.
It's routine. And if you think of most people's 2020 with the lockdowns, in hindsight, so in the moment it might have felt like a long year, but as we reflect back on it, it can feel like the year almost didn't happen, the quickest year ever, because there was no punctuation marks in your calendar in terms of gigs you went to or social events or anything. And then another way to think about it is when you go on holiday, you could go away on a 2-week holiday, and yes, when you come back, it feels like you've never been away, the 2 weeks pass quickly, but your experience of those 2 weeks when you're away can sometimes feel lengthened in time.
Yeah.
Because every day is filled with novel things, different bits of pieces. So that is a theory to why time passes quicker as we get older. And if you subscribe to that theory, then there's things you could do within that to slow down your experience of time. Just being present, soaking things in, maybe taking different routes to work, maybe try to put some novelty in your day or your week or your life.
Yeah. Lynsey.
No, Lynsey, me.
I'm glad you asked.
I'm glad I asked, because I was unsure of that theory. So no, thank you for sharing. Yeah, so would you say that we have more time then than we think in the day-to-day?
Well, that's something we want to discuss today. So on the one hand, we have less time than we think because time is going to pass faster and faster and faster, and it's an hourglass, and sooner or later it's gone. Now everybody, possibly as a consequence of that, or just the busy lives we live, we're overloaded, and we're like, oh geez, how do you find the time to do this or that? There's so much going on. And where I think we have more time than we think is that we don't utilize our time well, or we don't recognize how we use or misuse our time. Very much in the same few episodes back, we're talking about calories. Jase, you'd said, I think everybody should track their calories at least for some short period of time, because it brings an awareness to, people like, geez, I didn't realize what that half bottle of red wine did for my calories, or that peanut butter, or that. We're not very good at recognizing the calories that we eat, and it's the same with the time. So the simplest thing for anyone listening, if they open up their settings on their phone and go to screen time,
They will scream.
yeah, and just go have a look. How many hours did you spend on Instagram last week?
Go on then, Lynsey.
For example.
Open it up.
I don't have Instagram. I came off of it about 2 months ago. The best thing I ever did.
So it's a sort of thing. If you start tracking, paying attention to, managing your time, even doing a time audit. I understand all these things feel a bit stuffy and whatever, but you can begin to see, I do have more time than I think. I'm just like...
Utilising it in the wrong sense.
Yeah. I'm just not, like we said a couple of episodes back, we're not living by priority with our time.
Sorry,
No.
I was going to say, describe like what you mean by a time audit. Maybe the listener doesn't really understand that.
It's a horrible thing to do, first of all, but I have done it. Make a spreadsheet, put all the hours of the day.
So hours.
Well, it's up to you what you want to do. I think half-hour slots, 15-minute slots, whatever you can stomach. Make a column of all the hours of the day, and then
Write in exactly what you do.
over you probably need to stretch out for a week or something, and then.
So would you just add that in as the day goes on, or are you preparing the day already? So you know what's coming, or just every day, every hour, every half an hour, whatever, you're putting in exactly what you did on real time?
Listen, I don't do this, by the way. I have done it as an exercise. I don't do it day to day.
Would it be more of an experiment, just to open your eyes to it?
Yeah. And your question of, do you plan the time first or do you put it in afterwards? It's the same as tracking calories. If you track your calories exactly when you eat and write down what you've eaten, it's going to be more accurate than if you wait to the end of the day and go, oh, what did I have for lunch?
Yeah.
What did I do at 11:15 for 15 minutes? So, yeah, again, not a fun thing to do, and probably 99% of people listening will never do it in their lives, but I think there is definitely value in doing it.
Was there value for you?
Yeah, I think so. It just brings awareness. It's again, the same as the person tracking the calories who has this epiphany of, oh wow, I didn't realize that I could actually eat some chocolate every day, and it doesn't need to mean a total meltdown. Or I didn't realize that, wow, that what I'm doing between Friday and Sunday across the weekend is triple the calories I need, and that's why I'm going off track. So it brings things to our attention that regularly are not in our attention.
Yeah.
Do you track time at all, Lynsey?
Not to that extent. Like, I think I touched on it a couple of episodes back, where in lockdown I felt like I was bumbling along with no real reason or purpose. That's when I started to write down a sort of almost like a to-do list the night before. So I had everything from when I woke up right through to when I went to bed. I would tick it off at night and then go again for the next day. So I'd write it all out again, exactly what I'm doing. Like, that's probably the closest to time management that I...
I think that the thing with like a time audit, if someone were to do it, and I actually want to do maybe a series of episodes on this in the future, but our brain is very good at fooling us. And so it doesn't get things right all the time. So the person that's like, oh, I've eaten really well this week. They remember the spinach and the salad they had, but they forget the whole packet of digestives they ate. And it's the same with your time. You're like, they've done studies where they get people to rate how many hours a week they think they work. And people are putting like 60, 70 hours a week. And then actually track it like, most people average 40. Because we just fool ourselves.
So tracking time and planning things in are ways of manipulating. Is there any other ways we can manipulate time for the better? Yeah,
well, I think we can zoom in and zoom out.
What do you mean by that?
Mentally, in our head, so we can, like I spoke about, you can zoom out and see your life in whole, and say, right, okay, well, that late delivery in the context of a 90-year life is nothing. And then equally, you can zoom into moments and be more focused and things like that as well. So one little game is the 10-10-10 rule. Excuse me, where you can just ask yourself, how am I going to feel about this in 10 minutes time, in 10 weeks time, in 10 months time, or change it and make it 10
years.
10 years, yeah. Yeah, so there's little things you can do to manipulate time and how it's going to feel.
For things like the 10-10-10 rule, have you tried it? Have you thought about it? Like, how easy is it to actually sit there and think? Obviously, in the moment. So if you're waiting for a parcel from, I know, a reputable online company that delivers next day, and it didn't come next day, and you're like annoyed in the moment. How easy is it to go, well, actually, in 10 minutes, is this going to bother me? Or in 10 months, is it going to, like, I personally would find that very challenging. I'm already emailing.
How much practice have you had?
There's that too as well. Where do you?
So how
do you remind yourself to take that moment?
Yeah, like, I think it's practice, but again, we'll stress. I react emotionally to minor issues like everybody else does. But I think, like, I've certainly gone through phases where I get a bit more chill about it. And I feel like I regret things easily and hang on to regrets too strongly. And sometimes just asking these questions,
it's finding the time to ask the questions.
Help let that go. It's like,
it's hindsight.
You know, are you really going to care about this in 10 minutes time, 10 weeks time?
It's controlling your inner monologue to just settle down when you're like, look, am I going to care about this in 10 months' time? You're like, not really, no, but I'm still annoyed of it right now.
Yeah. and do you know what? There's place to be annoyed at stuff. Like, negative emotions have their place, because sometimes you need a bit of anger and rage or other emotions. They have the value.
I would say they do waste time if they continue, though.
If they continue,
they can drag on, right?
Yeah.
And also, if it's you that's suffering because of it.
Yeah.
Do you know, you can draw upon anger to stand up for something that is unjust, and that anger serves that great purpose. But if the anger is just you festering away, feeling angry, well, that's you who's suffering.
Yeah.
So again, it all sounds very Zen. It's questions and stuff that I have used at times to feel better, but I'm still human like everybody else, and I think it takes practice. Yeah,
it takes practice, and I think a really good point is that zooming in and out. Like, can you just take a second just to think, right, how important is this? Like, I always think to myself, like, zoom out a minute, just have a look from the outside, look in at what the situation is. Is it worth the negative? Probably not, but if it is, then yeah, go with it for a little while, but then you need to keep zooming in and out.
So how do you do that? And
I think it comes back to being present.
Yeah, tell me a bit. So what makes, how do you be more present? How do you...
Tactics
what's your tips and tricks?
I don't have regrets or worry too much about things. Okay. Like, I'll acknowledge them and I'll sit with them, but then I've got quite a rational and logic mind sometimes that can take over the emotional side. So I can see both parts of that in my brain.
Have you always had that, or is it something you've developed?
I remember in the first season or whatever, and I said that I was very much selfish and probably quite a horrible friend, and had my own views and just went for it in terms of, what's the word? Yeah, I'd probably just say selfishness. I never really thought about anybody else, and I think going travelling, coming back, slowing down a little bit and asking myself questions like that, is this going to matter? Is what's helped me do it. But again, that's been like 10 years of practice. It doesn't work overnight, I don't think. But yeah, I'd say that.
I want to give one more example of like the zooming in and out sort of thing. Given that, you know, we're going to get in a chat about injuries I
don't want to talk about injuries
in the future. But like I've done this to myself. You know, I've had discussions with members in the gym where, like, injuries can be frustrating, but sometimes it's like, well, do you know what? You take 1 week out now.
Yeah.
you won't even remember, like in the grand scheme of things, you won't even remember it.
Yeah.
Or you plough through with your injury and you end up taking 3 months out because you've got hurt. Like I did that in football more than once, I think, playing hurt rather than saying, John, it's a week.
Yeah.
You know, I played semi-pro football for 8 years. Like you can afford to miss a week. Or same for someone like just going to the gym or trying to get in shape or whatever.
I guess if you break that down into the hours, which I'm not even going to attempt to try and calculate 8 years in hours, but if you break the 8 years in hours all the way down into 1 week in hours, it's nothing.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's shifting perspectives is what it is.
Yeah.
Is there any other tips and tricks for manipulating time?
The one other thing just to mention here is the concept of flow. I think I would imagine most people can think of a time where they've been in the zone and where you're like totally focused, and the passage of time, your experience of it is different again. You know, maybe hours can pass and it feels like minutes because you're in this state of flow, and it's just another way to demonstrate that time, even though the seconds are measurable, the experience is different.
Yeah, I think everybody's experienced that at some point, even just when you're sitting with a good group of people and then you're like, oh, is that the time?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It passes.
Talking about like if you go on a night out and you're like, have we been sat here for 6 hours drinking? Like,
How is it 3 a.m?
yeah.
No,
been a long
not
time.
been there, Lynsey.
A
All
long
right, just
time
me
for me.
then.
It's been a long time. Okay, so we spoke about manipulating time and that might have less than we think, but we've also got more than we think. Let's give some tips and tricks on how to better utilize time or how to better manage it.
Mm-hmm. I think to begin with, time audit is a good place to start, and also that episode, was it two episodes back, maybe episode 27,
yeah.
where we were talking about like deciding what's important to you. I think so. A, where do I want to be spending my time, and then B, where am I currently spending my time? I think that's a place to start.
Yeah.
Did you want to take from here?
No, I'm happy for you to continue. I'll just jump in.
As you are.
As you were, Michael. I thought you were in your flow there.
Okay, well, the next thing, like one of the most famous time management sort of systems or books is the Getting Things Done, David Allen, and one of his, I think it's his line that really rings true with me is, brains are for having ideas, not for remembering them. And it's another way that our brains sort of fool ourselves.
Tricky.
So the first thing you do is you need a capture system for all like the things you need to remember. So that can be a notebook, it can be like an online system or something, but all the things a diary, all the things you need to do.
Notes in your phone. Or
is a capture. It could be an inbox of sorts, but it's like capturing all the tasks that you need to do. And from there, do you know, I want to give credit to Mark Fisher. He's a guy in the fitness industry who came up, I think he's like modified some of David Allen's stuff and came up with this CATS acronym for time management.
CATS.
CATS, C-A-T-S.
You struggled to spell it. C-A.
So the C is
First
capture.
one, yeah.
Capture.
The C is a capture system. Again, that's an inbox or a notes pad or whatever. Then A is analyze. So that's what tasks are important. People maybe know is it the Eisenhower matrix? Is that what it's called?
The Zeigarnik.
Not that one. No, hold on.
The urgent important.
Yeah, so
Urgent,
there's
Yeah.
4 quadrants where on the top left it's an important and urgent task, and then you've got important but not urgent,
Yeah.
and you've got not important and urgent, and you've got not important and not urgent.
You sure?
So you don't want to be, it sounds like you don't want to be in 3 and 4 much.
You don't want to be doing things that aren't important.
No.
Or urgent.
And in theory, so it goes that you want to spend your time doing the important things that are not urgent, not like the emergency stuff, because hopefully your time is planned and used better that you're not in emergency situations. But so you capture the tasks, you analyze the tasks, and it's about picking, like prioritizing them. Part of the analysis can also be, there's another one's at the 3 Ds, it's like
4 Ds.
do, delegate,
delegate, delete, and decide.
decide. Yeah.
Decide.
So again, that's just other ways of looking at this task. Is this first of all, is it important? Next thing is, can I just do it now? I think it's a David Allen thing where he's like, if you can do the task in 2 minutes or less, just do it now, get it done. Can I, you were talking about your gardening.
Yeah.
Can I delegate that? The decide one, I'm not sure. What does that one mean?
Decide who's going to do it or when you're going to do it.
And then the
deciding's probably in quadrant 2 for planning, is it?
Yeah.
Decide when.
Maybe deciding when. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Do is do now. Decide is decide
and
when.
Then delegate.
And then delete is like, I've got no business. This doesn't
I don't
matter.
need to do
Social
it.
media.
Yeah. So capture, analyze. The T. Oh, what a game changer this one is. I don't like that term. Sorry, game changer. But the T is transfer to calendar. Big realization is like, if it's not in the diary, if it's not planned in, it's probably not going to get done.
Sounds like you've had a bit of experience with this one.
Yeah, it
happens
think,
all the time.
Do you know what? Like before we finish the acronym, what I've done this year, because I was a bit old, I've had different types of capture systems and diaries and different, you can buy all different fancy journals and things. And I didn't like my system. It felt a bit messy. And I was in this, let's call it a mastermind group type thing. And someone said that they used a week planner that they buy off Amazon. So I went on Amazon, probably cost a $5, just like A4 tear off sheets, and it had your week. And all I've been doing is writing the most important task for the day in the day. And so I write down all the tasks as like a column at the side of the sheet, right? So here are maybe like 10 important things to do this week.
Yeah.
Okay, so when am I going to do it? Okay, well that can happen on Monday, that can happen on Tuesday. But if they don't actually get put in the calendar, they end up just going on to the next week. So you need to, or it's like a conversation at home, can we discuss this related to our upcoming wedding or some home improvements?
Is it in a calendar?
It's like, it's easy to say, yeah, we can have that discussion, but actually, if you want to get it done, when we're going to do that? Mm-hmm. Okay, let's do it on Thursday night or whatever.
Even just like before you go on, I remember you saying, I think it was 2019, that you both would write in when you would have like your weekends, like your date weekends throughout the year, so you know that you've actually got quality time together. Even that in itself, because you could say, we'll go do something next weekend. Well, it will never happen if it's not written down and planned,
to be fair,
unless it's spontaneous.
Yeah, I took that from Mike as well and did put that in, and it was a game changer.
Do you know what I like to do is, at the turn of the year, buy one of these big wall planners, and the first thing, this is something I learned from another mentor, he color codes his time. I'm going to forget all the time. There's blue sky, strategy sort of time. There's mellow yellow, holiday time. There's red tape, which is like your admin type stuff, and that might be home admin, sorting out your car insurance, stuff like that. And then there's green machine, green meaning making money. The guy's American, so green. But the first thing he did with his annual calendar was put the mellow yellow in. So it's like sprint, rest, sprint, rest, sprint, rest. And again, I think that's been a problem, certainly for me during COVID, is that
sprint,
not having
no rest,
not having the normal calendar where you plan the breaks in. So that's like on a bigger scale, but then it's the same thing week to week. And didn't we speak I think a few episodes back about how many people that we have at AKR who are just like, the very fact that I have my session booked in means I'm far more likely to show up.
Yeah.
Because then it just comes to plan it in, do it anyway. Plan it in, do it anyway. Mm-hmm. So that's the transfer to calendar. And S is seek improvement. So again, this just goes into the none of us are perfect. The system's not perfect. I've seen me have like string a couple of phenomenal weeks together where I'm like, wow, I'm so productive, I'm so on point. And then you have a week where it doesn't quite go so well, and maybe you tweak your schedule a little bit or, adjust.
Maybe the problem is there as well, if that happens to people, they'll have this like huge buzz, really great couple of weeks, and then they're feeling a little bit low, but they don't jump in and assess it, and they just let it happen, and then all of a sudden the toys are out the pram and they're just like, well, back to square one, because they've not taken the time to then stop and be like, okay, assess and seek improvement on why that's happened and change it.
Yeah. And like, I love this stuff, right? Because it all comes together. You decide what matters to you in your life. From there, you can chunk it down. Okay, so what? You remember the quote? What matters most should never be at the mercy of what matters least.
Yeah.
So what matters most? Then it's like, okay, so what are the things I need to be doing to serve that which matters most? And then, how can I put them in my calendar? And that's it. And then so like where I love about this is if I string a few weeks together of doing this, sometimes I feel like actually I need less time than I think because I'm doing the most important thing first. So if you do for a week the most important task, it might not be first depending on your daily schedule, but if you've planned that most important task in, if you can do it first, it's a winner. Then you've got a week where you've done, let's count just the working week, you've done 5 most important tasks. And if you do that for 2 weeks or 3 weeks or 10 years,
it builds.
Yeah, I think the difference you're gonna make in your life, it's extraordinary.
Massive.
And that's one thing. Sorry, just to go on a bit more.
Yeah, no, go for it.
I've gone through these periods where I've tried all different like morning routine things, where it's like, oh, do you know what? I'm going to try and do exercise first, or I'm going to try and do journaling first, or I have dabbled with meditation, or, all this sort of like productivity guru, holy hour, get your mind right in the morning. And the most impactful thing for me was to get up early and do the most important thing first.
The first things first.
Yeah, and I've maybe done that
Is that when you're the most crisp?
Crisp, yeah, we're talking about that. That's another Mark Fisher one, isn't it? But then sometimes by 7 a.m, you're like, do you know what? No matter what else happens today, I've moved the needle,
Yeah. I'm intrigued by this crisp. What's crisp?
You know that one, yeah? Do you want to take that one?
I think, again, Mark Fisher, he's always said, do the most important things when you feel crisp and not crispy. So for example for Mike, it's so good for Mike in the morning.
That makes so much sense.
I know. He's like, right, priority number 1, I need to get this done. I'm crisp. I'm in the right mindset. That's when he best functions. He gets it done. It's crisp. And then throughout the day, when you get a little bit more like crispy, bit like, then you can do the lower priority tasks. I think that's how it works.
Or the tasks that are less mentally demanding.
Yeah.
So maybe you've got to do the shopping, or maybe it's just like clearing out your email inbox, or whatever, one of these low cognitive demand tasks. So that can still get done, but schedule that in a time where you're not going to be, don't get up first thing. That's the procrastination game, isn't it? It's where you feel like you need to do something, but you're kind of putting off the important work. So you'll do this sort of mediocre work that still needs to be done, but you're doing that in your best hours. You're doing that when you're crisp.
Yeah.
And that's the problem.
What's the book Eat That Frog? Is that similar to?
That's Brian Tracy.
Yeah.
Which, I was kicking myself in this book because my friend recommended that book years ago to me.
And by the way, that's a spoiler alert, isn't it?
What is?
Eat the frog.
Eat the frog?
So, but I didn't read the book because it's a very short book, and
You didn't have the time. Right?
I understood,
Too many books.
I understood the premise.
Yeah.
And the premise is, if you have to eat a frog every day, you're best to get up and eat that frog first thing and get it out of the way.
The whole thing.
And if you have to eat 2 frogs,
yeah.
you should eat the biggest, ugliest frog first and just
Otherwise,
get it
you'll
done.
be thinking about eating the frog all day.
Yeah,
Exactly.
do difficult things first.
Yeah.
Takes your mind away.
So I didn't read the book, but then I think it was only a couple of years ago, I finally got the audiobook and listened to it, and I don't know, I felt I got more from it than simply the premise.
Right, since we're talking books, is there any other book recommendations for time or for productivity?
Probably, I don't know who the author is, but it's 7 Skills of Highly Effective People. That's
Covey,
good.
Stephen Covey.
Yeah,
Stephen Covey.
that for priorities
Yeah.
and time. I think that.
I think rule number 1 for that is first things first.
First things first.
Yeah. First
things first,
Begin with the end in mind.
Yeah.
Begin with the end in mind. Yeah, sorry.
I would say that's a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Off the Clock by Laura Vanderkam.
This
Cam.
I listened to a podcast recently with Laura on it, and she has tracked her time meticulously for 3+ years now. 3+ years.
I think she runs every day as well.
She's run every single day for, I think it was like 600 and something days when I listened to her on the podcast.
Oh my God.
Every day. Like, wow.
She gets stuff done then.
Yeah, she had this really good line that it rang with me. There's 24 hours in a day, 168 hours in a week, and it's going to pass. So whether you think about how it passes or you don't, it's still passing. I was like, oh, okay, you got me.
I love that one. Like, the time will pass anyway is something I try and say to myself. So if you're having the time of your life, if you're really like in a good place, I try and be like, soak it in.
Yeah.
Soak it in.
Yep.
Because you're not going to be here for forever. Like for me, I immediately think of, I went to the World Cup in Brazil. I remember like it had been this like sort of dream plan for a long time. And I remember standing there. This is why the memory is so strong, because I took a moment. I was standing there in the Maracanã Stadium in Rio, just being like, just breathing it in and just soaking it in. On the other hand, when you're going through it, you know, keep going, because you won't be going through it forever. The time will pass, even though, you know, it might be years. And another thing is, what is hard to endure can actually be sweet to remember. You know, I try and get this across sometimes to members and finishers. It's like, go on, like, let's empty the tank this last 5 minutes of the session, because you're not even going to remember it anyway.
Yeah.
You're not going to remember the feeling of your legs burning. You're just going to feel like the exhilaration afterwards.
Yeah.
I think that's a good place to.
Yeah. Any other books? Any other tips and tricks? I think The One Thing was mentioned. That's quite a good book.
Gary Keller.
From that book, I think I got, you know, write a list of everything you need to do that day. So you have 10 things, score out the bottom 8, and start from there.
Yeah. I think just one thing, because I'm the sort of person that would do this. I would think, right, okay, I need to get better at managing and using my time. So what I'm going to do is go and read these books to learn about managing and utilising my time. Actually, I think we've shared most of what people need. Decide what's most important, schedule it in, and do that first. Do that first. So yes, go and read on the outside of that.
Yeah.
But it's
Expand
it's
your
the action. The key is taking action, right? It's getting stuff done,
Yeah.
as Dave Allen says.
Act and cat. Or act on cat. Cats.
I'm like, where are you going with this?
Okay,
Is this new?
it didn't work in my head. All right, any final thoughts on time? Or is that all we've got time for?
I think that's what we've got time for.
All right, folks, that's it from us. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for listening. If you have the time, please spare a little of it and give us a 5-star rating. We only take 5 stars. Isn't that right, Lynsey?
I'll take 4.5.
4.5. Of course, if you want to give us any questions, we are at Mike.
Email us at podcast at akrfitness.com.
And if you
Podcast
are-
at akrfitness.com.
And if you're sharing us on social media, Lynsey.
That would be #Energising Life podcast.
I think that's the first time she's got that right. All right, folks, that's it for us. We'll see you in the next one.